Evening, welcome to the Town of Rutland, Office of the Select Board. This is our regular meeting. We are starting at 6:44 tonight, Monday, January 13th. We are here in the Rutland Free Public Library in the lower level. This meeting is called to order and opened. Just as a note, we do record all these meetings for transmission on Rutland Public Access Television and on YouTube. Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Can I get a motion to sign Treasury Warrant number 15 and payroll?
Motion to sign Treasury Warrant number 15 and payroll.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And we have one set of minutes from our New Year's Eve meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes as written. I know that Jeff is doing from
Right.
Yeah.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion from either of you? If not, all in favor?
Nice.
Aye.
Aye. And
Abstain.
thank you. And 2 abstentions. Perfect. We're gonna move right on to Mike.
Yep. I'm going to start with B, annual town report. This is just a reminder that we are accepting nominations for the in honor of and in memory of sections of the town report. We traditionally do both. A report is printed in honor of and then a memoriam of someone who has passed away. So if anyone has any nominations, please get those in writing to Laura Paradise in the PA Select Board office at Town Hall.
Deadline?
End of February. Couple of other updates, as Director Buckley mentioned earlier in our previous meeting of the Board of Public Works briefly. Portions of Britnell and Emerald Road are currently closed due to the mud conditions. With the sudden increase in temperature and flash melt, the road is just, it's hard to get cars through there that don't have all the four-wheel drive. The DPW has been good at notifying both myself and our public safety officials of the situations over there and getting information out to the residents via social media. And updates will come out as needed.
Can I ask a quick question?
Britnell is currently passable. Emerald remains closed.
Through the chair. So I saw, because this was a hot topic when we were on social media, in full disclosure, I live on Brentwood, but there's some confusion as to, there's members of the street that think that the street can or cannot be paved. I know that there's something that the street voted on prior, but if there's a way we can clarify for those who think it can or can't, whether that is an option. I just think that there's confusion over why it can't be paved, why it isn't paved, why it is the way it is. That's not to advocate a position, it's just to say that there is confusion among some of the residents that, you know, why the street is unpaved, so.
Maybe we can clarify that.
Great.
It's a town meeting though. Chapter 90 from the Commonwealth went up this year, 10% Commonwealth-wide. So we are expecting a slight increase in our numbers. We will be getting those from the Commonwealth officially shortly.
Sorry.
Yes.
Can I just loop back to the Britnell and Emerald thing? I think there's also some confusion with I don't know the timing of when the town let the school bus transportation group know that it was closed and going to be closed to bus traffic, but there was a lot of confusion that only one of the principals in town sent out a message last night, and so I know there was confusion as to what was going on with that.
It was around 11 a.m. yesterday morning that we first let the district know of the issues and that we were closing the roads.
And is that typically the protocol that the town lets the district know and it's the district's onus to then communicate to
the bus company because they are the district's contract.
The residents that are affected, whatever?
Yes.
I think I would clarify that that is supposed to be the protocol. Yeah. But honestly, Joe, from a small town perspective, we have 3 schools in this town, 3 principals. I think the more we can be involved and communicate with them directly, the better. The better for us, the better for you, the better for them. I don't know that we can always rely on the district communicating effectively when there is an extenuating circumstance like this. So it's probably, or timely. So it's probably in our best interest to go that extra step for our town schools.
One more thing, typically, we'll contact the bus company directly in the event of an emergency. If we had a culvert fail, or a water main break, we'll call the bus company directly.
Right,
We do that.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And again, so we are expecting an increase in chapter 90 when it comes in, we'll let you know. At the last meeting of the select board, I notified the board that Dave George, the town planner, and I were able to secure Kelleher and Sadowski as a commercial real estate broker for the Heights property. We also have good news that we've received last week. A couple months ago, after Secretary Keneally and Deputy Secretary McGorthy came out, Dave and I reached out to Doug Kellum, who is the Executive Director of Mass Econ. Mass Econ picks a certain number of locations throughout the Commonwealth to advertise in Massachusetts, outside of Massachusetts, and internationally. And we were selected, and our application was approved for advertising the Heights property. For,
Awesome,
Huge, nicely.
thank
so
you.
we'll see
Good job, Mike.
how that goes there. Hopefully that brings stuff in. We did take their recommendation. There was an existing RFP out for the Heights for 6 months that ends at the end of May. They suggested releasing a second RFP that runs concurrent with that one, so we now have one that ends in March and one that ends in May. If someone's got their ducks all in a row ready to go, why have them wait? So we'll have an intermittent there, so hopefully
Staggered.
hopefully now between the two, really pushing this in marketing, that have experience marketing this type of property and have the connections already, we'll get something going.
Great, good job.
Thank you.
The police department received a $5,000 grant, and this week all of our cruisers will be fitted with printers. That way they can input tickets through the laptops that are in the cruisers and just print them right then and there. So that's a new grant we got. On the topic of the police department, they've completed their No Shave November, December for charity. Thank you to Lee's Barbershop for doing the shave off event, and they raised just over $600 to be donated to the Home Base program, which is a nonprofit for veterans with PTSD.
Great.
Reminder that the Cannabis RFI deadlines are coming this week. I may be requesting that we extend the RFI, or close and reopen the RFI for non-adult use retail sales. So because we have 5 available licenses and only 1 was picked up, so we'll close this round, evaluate this round, and then reopen because we'll probably still have extras after that.
Okay.
I do want to welcome Jacob Nichols, who's our new cable employee next door with his first meeting, so welcome to the club, Jake. CMRPC informed us that they had leftover DLTA, direct local technical assistance funding for the year, and we'll be putting that towards Rutland's energy use reduction program that we've already started with the New Communities program. We received a notice of a foreclosure of a property that's in 61A in town. After speaking with town council, because this is a foreclosure by a mortgage company, this isn't something that the town has right of first refusal on. This is just a notification that a property that's in 61A is undergoing a foreclosure process.
Is it on Glenwood?
Bridge.
No.
I think my question is less about whether we have right of first refusal. That's not an option right now, it's not up for sale. My question is, does the 61A follow the property's deed? Which, to my understanding, it does.
Yes, both the 61A on the property and the APR on the property will follow, it's a property off of Maple Avenue.
So there's APR on it also?
Yes.
How does, just out of curiosity, how does that transfer, because it's transferring ownership? I mean, the bank is going to what, acknowledge the 61A before they
I'm not sure how the 61A works, I'll look into that more, but I do know for a fact that the APR does carry with the deed.
You know, I think the other question is if this foreclosure company were to auction the property, what does that do? Does the
These
person
are all
who-
things we're looking into. But again, just because a letter was sent to the board and to my office as well as various other boards, commissions, and departments of the town, notifying them that a 61A property is now in foreclosure process.
Do we know what bank is the lender? Because I mean, I think you get, to your point, you get different responses, whether it's local or national. I would think that what they would do to auction that off would be, they would pay whatever the penalty is for the prior 2 years of taxes
Yeah.
to remediate that, and then to have it removed, if the board wanted to remove it, so they could auction it clean.
As opposed to auctioning it with a 61A
That's right.
attached?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like we have to
I've
raise
seen
the
similar
scale
kind
on
of-
that, yeah.
But I feel like the APR is another level of complexity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the state would get involved.
And I
Yeah.
have a question, could we reach out to AgCom, because I think they should have a lot of resources as far as the legality of these transfers and be able to contact people at the state level that could maybe offer insight.
What's the
Please give me a heads up.
Yeah.
I mean, either way, it's still privately owned.
Yes.
I mean, so it's like it's owned, but it's by a bank, so I mean.
But could we share this information with AgCom?
Yeah, I mean, they did receive a letter, as far as I'm aware, too,
But-
from the,
Can it maybe go out that, I don't know if the board agrees, explicitly asking them for guidance, assistance, and obtaining additional information as to the process that could happen in foreclosure.
It might be the other way around, if we can get a very clear legal opinion on what happens to the
Yes.
61A, which we own
Yeah.
by right, based on the tax impact, and what happens is it goes through that process, and then AgCom could be able to say, when and if they would want to step in.
I mean, I imagine KP's dealt with this before, so they
Yeah.
can probably provide us some
Can't
guidance.
be the
as to-
first one.
yeah.
But I'd like to involve some,
I just want to give a quick shout out to a couple of Rutland residents who have been in the news lately, and I have copies of the articles that they were in. So from the Worcester Business Journal, Alexis and Osiris Vallejos from Bria Coffee were highlighted there, so I did copy that off for members of the board if anyone would like a copy of it. And Cindy Purcell, our ADA coordinator, had a spotlight in the Worcester Telegram here, so I have copies of that for anyone who is interested in reading that. Both excellent articles, all wonderful people, and I just wanted to say congratulations to them. And my last thing is just a thank you. Tomorrow makes it 1 year since I started with the town, so thanks for everyone who's,
No, I think you're doing a great job personally.
thank you. Just thanks to everyone for their help and work, and look forward to continuing.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Does anybody have anything for Mike? At this time, no. If not, we are going to public comment.
Okay.
Public comment?
Mhm.
All right, off you go.
I don't need to go. I can, because the mic up
Name and
there.
address.
All right, Sean Moore, my office, 3 Hudson Avenue. I actually had a question on Mike. You said you were going to extend one of the RFIs?
So,
If I may, before you respond.
Yeah.
A public notice did go out on both RFIs, right? And that the date was going to be closed on both on the 16th.
yes.
So what do you think it would be if, to anybody that approached the town for those should be considered for I mean, 'cause it was a public notice that went out. If no one responded and only one person responded, or only 2 people responded, how many other people responded? It said it would be closed on the 16th. I think that's fair opportunity for anybody from the public to come and take their chance.
Yeah, and that's what I tried to clarify too, because I may have misspoken, because that's the opposite of what I actually meant. We legally have to close and evaluate what we receive by the 16th. What I'm saying, for the additional licenses, cultivation,
But you made a public announcement for cultivation.
yes,
Yeah, okay. I
So
can
that's why
understand
we
for
have
the
to
other
close.
licenses.
yeah,
Okay.
because we're legally, we have to close, because
Yeah.
we're 3 days out.
Okay.
And then, if we have any extra licenses left over at the end, we
Oh,
can
okay, because there's
reopen a
5,
second
okay.
process.
And also, I mean, just to clarify too,
I get it.
even if there's only a couple applicants and however many licenses or whatever RFP, whether it's for marijuana or, dispersing the building, the review committee doesn't have to accept any proposal, even if it's the only proposal.
Okay.
It's not, well, we
It's
only
not
got
that
one, it has to
timeline.
be this one.
Okay. Okay,
If
that
it doesn't meet
explains a lot as
the
well.
minimum evaluation criteria, or if the committee doesn't like it for myriad reasons, that can be rejected and we can rebid out.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's saying a possible reopen of a second
Okay.
RFI.
I get it, I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here for public comment? Would you come up? Name and address.
Good evening, Michael Burrell from Uxbridge and Warren, Mass. The reason why I'm here tonight is to follow up from an email to Mr. Nicholson, Laura Paradise, and to Miss Shelia Dibb. That was an email that was sent all the way back on Thursday, October 31st, 2019. That was a Board of Selectmen executive session request. I have the email here, and since October 31st, 2019, there's been no reply from anybody. So, Mr. Nicholson, I obviously know that you got this, and I just like you, and I have emailed you again, actually twice, asking for an update, and we talked on the phone, and you had confirmed to me that this was forwarded to the chairperson at this board. So that explains to me that you submitted it to somebody, and I haven't heard a single thing from anybody. So does somebody have, so my first question is, what is the explanation why when I send an email on October 31st that nobody from this town, which I know we have some other selectmen here, but they didn't have anything to do with it, why is it that nobody has replied back to that? And I did have another conversation with Mr. Nicholson that was probably 2 or 3 hours, that I said, look, I'm just trying to get this citizen's complaint resolved before it gets to litigation. And I think right now it's so far down the tube that it's going to go to litigation. I want it to go to litigation unless you
can we
have
just-
some type of answer.
Just real quick, can we
Yes.
back up? What situation, what are we talking about here?
Okay, well, I guess I can back
Just
up.
to clarify,
Yeah, yeah,
because
sure.
I don't think
Just-
everybody's on the same page.
So, sure, that, I will absolutely do that. So the situation that we have is your Rutland Regional Dispatch Center dispatches for the town of Warren. And there were some inconsistencies or problems with some public records requests. And I wanted my own police report on an incident that I was assaulted by a Warren town employee, and was treated rudely, got the runaround from your dispatch center supervisor, and had rude discussions with your dispatchers. So putting that aside, I still never got those records. And then I think it was the town administrator had said to me, well, I guess your best bet is, so all these stories kind of started coming out that the server's still at the Warren Police Department. You have your own computers here, you have your own dispatching software that is here. And the way I explained this to my attorney, as I understood it, is you own certain pieces of equipment here that are used for dispatching, that you own the computers, you own that software license. When the dispatcher's data enter that goes into the server that's still in Warren, that the town of Warren owns. So where this is going is, I've already complained to the Warren Selectmen, and they said, oh no, our town is not responsible for problems, because the only problem with this, the only issue that Warren has is the server in Warren. Everything else, they're your employees, they're your computers, they're your software license. So what happened is, I was refused to give these records, and the answer I kept getting from your dispatcher center supervisor was, we don't give out police reports. So I did a records request here, I did a records request in Warren, and nobody had any records proving that, because here they were saying, well, we have an agreement, we can't do it. So I found out that both places lied to me, and that was not a true statement, that I couldn't get a police report here. What did end up coming out, and the reason why this complaint is a disaster right now, was because of the records that I wanted. They were related to me, and they were a situation that if I got these records, it would prove that a crime occurred. So I ended up having to get a lawyer to go to the Warren Selectmen because we had bias and unethical problems with the Warren Police Department providing these records. So it turns out we had a selectman there that was able to get me the records, and then when I got the records, that proved that everything that I was saying all along of the 2 dispatch centers, that the policies and procedures were not being followed and people were lying. So where this goes is Rutland, so after I complained to your police chief here in an email about some issues, and then he says, oh my God, I'm so sorry, what's your complaint? I sent him that email, I think that was May of 2019 now. I sent him that complaint alleging issues of misconduct, falsification of police records, committing felonies while on duty, and all sorts of things, including Rutland dispatchers texting with Warren police officers, which violates both town social media policies. So your town was able to provide me those records, which I got, and what is the most disturbing was the audio recording that apparently someone from this town didn't listen to the audio recording because when they sent it to me. So what happened is, I'm not going to go into the whole story, but I'll make it brief, is there was a issue where the Warren police chief did a records request and gave out created a social security number breach. I then went around informing employees of the Warren Town Hall of the social security number breach. One lady was very pissed off. She walked into the selectman's office, threw a fit. The selectman was there. I was explaining it because they were blaming me, and then I said, I'm not responsible for the social security breach, and she was mad because their social security and personal information of the planning board members had gone out. So then the Warren selectman grabs a chair and then tries to throw a chair at me because he's mad because I got these records, and I'm now proving that their police chief created a crime by a social security number breach. She jumps on his back. I end up getting assaulted and battered in that selectman's office, and I run out the door. So how this is connected to you is I go on my phone, and now when you call Warren Police, it rings to your dispatch center. So I explained on several audio recorded lines that I was a victim of an assault, and a bunch of things went down, and I described everything in detail, and I also told your dispatcher that I was going to go to the state police barracks and file an application for a criminal complaint against the selectmen. So it turns out, I call my lawyer at the time, he says, no, go right to the East Brookfield Courthouse. Go to the East Brookfield Courthouse, file the application for a criminal complaint. 10 minutes later, the security officer comes over to me, and I already find out that now there's monkeying of all the court cases, that my application for criminal complaint against the Warren Selectmen has the docket number's been shut off after I paid the $15. So I said, this is ridiculous. I says, they're just covering each other up. So I then make 3 more phone calls to your Rutland Regional Dispatch Center. And I specifically, on the very first call, I explained about the assault and battery, who the suspect was, and all I got for the dispatcher was, yep. So I then said, so I'm on the line saying, well, don't you want the suspect's name? Sure, I'll take it. She data enters all this in, she takes the information. Then I asked her, are you data entering it? Oh, no, I'm not. I'm just writing it down. So I said, do I have a police report number? No, I don't. Call back. So I call back 2 more times on a recorded line, and at the same time, and I don't mind sharing this now, at the same time I'm calling your employee, I'm using my other cell phone, videoing the conversation of what she's saying to me to prove that if something goes wrong, who it's on. So anyhow, so I now do this and I report that I've been assaulted. So what does your Rutland police dispatcher do? She calls the Warren police chief on the radio and she says, oh, that idiot just called here. And she says, give me a call. So the Warren police chief, who's been fired because of my complaint, he now calls your dispatch center on the recorded line, and they have a brief conversation, and he says, I already called the East Brookfield Courthouse, I already paid him off. Did you guys do what I said to change the data in the computer system? So right on your own audio recording from the public records requests are your dispatchers. They're basically exactly what they did. They, instead of entering the data that I told them when I called them, they lied And they also, because Bruce Spakowski had ordered them to put certain information into that system, and that's exactly what they did. So 4 of your 7 dispatchers falsified police records for Bruce, and it's on the audio recording. And then you also sent me additional evidence which incriminates this town and incriminates the town of Warren. So I told Mr. Nicholson, I have 2 sets of problems. I have a problem over here and a problem here in this town of Rutland. So the issue was, the Rutland Selectmen, the Warren Selectmen, I met with them, I gave them copies of all the paperwork, and the chairman then at the time was so mad that he was going to sever the dispatch contract. He goes, I've had it, we're done with Rutland, this is what I'm going to do. And he says right now, and he goes, if they falsified records for your case of the town of Warren, I'm sure they've certainly done it for other people. And there was still no explanation from anybody from this town why those dispatchers took orders from Bruce Spakowski, who's not even their boss, and falsified the records. So I sent all these complaints, I sent you itemized things, I even sent you, which I wasn't supposed to do according to the Selectmen in Warren, they didn't want me forwarding my conversation with them because they were looking into suing you and prosecuting you. So I got then bamboozled by Warren Selectmen saying, well, we changed our mind, we're not going to do anything, I think I should go sue Rutland. So that's why I'm here today, and I was nice enough to change my tune and give Mr. Nicholson this email here that I sent him all the secret emails about what Warren Selectmen were saying about him and the complaints. So I was hoping that this town would do something about the complaint. So I sent that in May, another email on October 31st. There's YouTube videos on it, there's evidence I posted on the internet. I even sent all the towns that you dispatched for, I told them that I wouldn't trust you because if you got your employees falsifying police records, they certainly shouldn't be dispatching, there should have been an investigation. And the worst thing that I will publicly say, like I explained to Mr. Nicholson, is being ignored. I communicated to you, I don't know how many times, and I've just been ignored. Nobody ever called other than the police chief sent me a 1 paragraph of an apology and said, I'm sorry you're having a bad experience at Rutland Regional Dispatch, you really need to go to the Selectmen and get an investigation going. So,
So if I can
yes.
just jump in.
Yeah. So now you have an yeah.
So, okay, you're all set, Mr. Berlin? Did you get through the story?
Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the story. So what I'm saying is you have at least 20 emails of all the stuff that I've said, and I told Mr. Nicholson on the phone, I says, I'm not very happy, and I says, I've sued a town before, I'm willing to sue you again, and it turns out Warren is willing to sell you down the river, and I came to Mr. Nicholson and I said, look, if they're going to ignore me, I'll help you and let you sue the Warren police chief, because he's the one that initiated the crime to your employees that they did. So,
Just to be clear,
yes.
from this board tonight here in Rutland, what are you looking for?
What am I looking for?
From this board in Rutland?
Yes.
Because-
Well, the answer to that question is I sent you an email on October 31st
Was it
for
just
an
a-
agenda request.
So I'm going to stop you. I did not receive an email from you at all. However, I do have older emails forwarded to me from March and from August, and I'm not at all saying that there wasn't an October email. I'm just saying I don't have it in front of
This one
me.
was specific for a Board of Selectmen agenda request.
Okay,
And I've been waiting all that time for somebody to say,
okay,
no, you're not on the agenda, yes, you are,
okay.
what dates are you available? And I certainly understand, because Mr. Nicholson said, I would like you to be on the agenda. I also did talk to Mitch. Mitch says, oh yeah, you should absolutely be on the agenda, but it's out of our hands and it's all in
Just-
Sheila's.
Please to clarify,
Yes,
when you had called me,
Yeah.
like constituents called,
yeah.
I did not say you should be on the agenda. I said that we have a public comment section to where you.
Yes, no, I'll clarify, yeah, that is correct, yes.
This is the same.
Yes, and then you said any issues, any requests need to go to Sheila, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so let's just
So,
back
yeah.
up. So we're back to the original question of what you're looking for from this board, because
Yeah.
that was a lot of allegations and that was a lot. What you're looking for from this board, my understanding from the October email, was an executive session, which I can tell you right now, and here I am, I'm Sheila, we do not have the grounds based on what you have and what you are requesting, the position you are in right now, to have an executive session. And I think you probably know this quite well, we have open meeting laws that we have to follow. You are well within your rights to come here tonight and speak and during public comment to a point. We do have some guidelines that we try to follow as far as time
No, I
limits.
understand.
But at this point, in the absence of any official legal action against the town, we have no right to go into executive session with you. Not any, not at all. Again, in this situation as it stands right now. So I apologize if that wasn't the very clear answer that you should have gotten any time you asked, certainly from our town. We
Right.
do not have the grounds for an executive session with you here right now.
So my question is, I don't quite understand that, because anybody can put an agenda request.
Yes.
And my agenda request was I wanted it to be public, a public agenda request. But it was at the advice, maybe it was Mr. Nicholson or somebody said, well, it probably wouldn't be in the best interest of the town to have a public agenda request. Would you be willing to do an executive session? So this was just the board and myself. So that was the reasoning for doing that.
Can we
And
also just-
there are actually items, as you know, under the executive session that you can pick, disciplinary action against a public employee. That
That's-
would be the reason, and I have no problem having them and myself in
But
there.
again, we have no official written complaints in front of us that would instigate an executive session at this time.
So,
At this time, we
uh,
have
So-
nothing.
but-
Just to be clear,
so
Adam,
you're saying all the past
through the
complaints?
chair, can you-
Yeah,
just a
I'm sorry,
second,
go
sir.
ahead, I'm sorry.
We haven't really received anything about this, and I'm still unclear as to, I heard your story, I understand it, but nothing has really come
No.
before us on this, and I think, in that sense, I'm not sure if we've received anything or official complaints
Right.
or anything of that nature. It's hard for us to do anything or to even discuss it without having anything in front of us as to something to look at, or to have like a concise, whatever needs to be submitted, or complaint, or anything of that nature.
Yeah,
Well, I can
I-
answer your question, right, this is,
Mr. Burrow, hold on one
Th-
second.
this is
Oh,
the
Mr.
step-
Burrow, hold on one second.
okay, go ahead.
Mr. Stillings.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming out.
Yeah,
So I have one question, one comment.
yeah, sure.
Question, I mean, a lot of
No, I-
allegations going out here.
Yeah.
You have a lot of history, a lot of records, you mentioned some tapes. Where I think we do have venue here is your allegation against the dispatchers. That what you're saying is some misconduct with the reports, et cetera. My question is, where is all this discovery, and can we get it? Because I would be interested in looking at it. My comment is that it doesn't necessarily have to be an issue for the board. I mean, you have a complaint against specific employees or the process. Mr. Nicholson is the town administrator. He administers, he's the boss of these employees in there. So I think the proper venue is Mike Nicholson if you're making a beef about town employees specific to Rutland. Now, all the other issues that you have with Warren, well, that,
No, I
we're in
understand.
Rutland, right?
Yeah, I know.
And
yeah.
if there's something that we
Yeah,
can
that's why I
help
said I gotta
about
separate it, yeah.
or if there's something that we can help about a beef that you have with Rutland employees, and dispatchers are Rutland employees, I think the avenue is with our town administrator, because he's the boss of them. Personally, I like to keep the selectmen out of the weeds of that, because we do have a town administrator for issues like that, for complaints about an employee. So, and I guess not to put you on the spot, Mike, but is there any reason why we can't facilitate a sit-down once you have discovery, instead of going, because you have a lot of different, going a lot of different ways, right? And then when you say, okay, this person did that, it kind of halts things. You have to have all your presentation, your ducks in a row that you can present and articulate to somebody. But I would like to see that either for Mike and/or, you said you have a problem with the actual dispatch director?
Yes, he lied to me.
Okay.
He lied in the public records request.
Well, so again, and I, just to jump off of that recommendation, I'm hoping maybe you can take this, go back to your attorney, who I'm hoping is very well versed in the rules that we have for open meeting and going into executive session, because to this point, when we start naming names, We then have responsibility to all parties involved. We have a specific posting, we have a specific means, we have to give a person the right to have an attorney with them. So there's a whole process that we haven't even hit yet. We haven't even hit the starting gate yet. And hopefully, coming off of this meeting, it's something that you can get farther along with, because what you've got right now is nothing that we can take along to your next step that you were asking for.
Through the chair too, I think, because I want to be helpful, and I know that you're obviously, this is something you're invested in and you're upset. And, I think too, if you are unhappy with something you receive in the town, or if in general you feel like requests are being ignored, or if you feel like there's unethical behavior, as a general rule, there are built-in systems to address that. And I mean, you could get in touch with the State Ethics Commission. There's several avenues that the state uses to address municipal issues, and I'm wondering if you either had those conversations or looked into that, because I feel like we want to be helpful as much as we can, and like the chair said, there's limited information, there's limited things we can do as a board, but I also want to inform you as to, there are other avenues as well to address some of those complaints that you have, to where you can talk to somebody about those.
Hold on a sec, Mike.
Yeah, and just to throw out there too, Mr. Burrell, my apologies for not getting back to you. I thought our phone conversation, the one that you alluded to where it was like 2-3 hours, I thought that was, this was explained in there, that I had talked to the chair, and that, maybe I'm just remembering wrong, that could be me, and I will admit that.
No, the last time we talked is that you had said that Shelia was non-responsive to you.
Maybe she hadn't responded at that point, but I know we talked about it before. But I will say too, is from that conversation that we did have too, that's where we were able to get a little more information there, which is how I was able to get that document from the Warren Selectmen that verified what Director Moriarty said, that any police report request of the town of Warren should go to the town of Warren rather than Rutland Dispatch. And I forwarded that to you as part of your question.
Yes, you did, right, correct, yeah. And what I do know for a fact is that was created because of this exact incident. Because when you gave me the evidence that is incriminating to the town of Warren, they didn't like that. Because when I got the records that you got, I shared them with the town of Warren, and they were very upset.
Mr. Burrell,
yes.
in all due respect,
Yes.
if the municipality of Warren has some issue with another municipality, I would, if they want to do something, they should go ahead and do it. I'm not sure how that's germane to tonight, and do you know what I mean? You have very specific things you're requesting of Rutland. That's the best we're gonna be able to deal with right now, not whether Warren is gonna, I don't know, try to,
Through the chair.
take us on his territory, I don't know.
To be clear, and for the record, you started your discussion in the public comment that you were here to request an investigation. And just to be crystal clear, this is not an investigative body with the town select board. I think if that's what you're still looking for, an investigation into misconduct, again, I would direct you towards the town administrator, police chief, or the director of the.
Just so we're clear too, to kind of get off of Jeff's point, can we clarify what the actual official complaint process is, and was that followed in this case?
I mean, we received the complaint from Mr. Burrell. The request was made to come before the board. And that request was forwarded to the chair. The chair and I had a discussion that we didn't think it fell under executive session. This is where, again, I could just be remembering it wrong compared to what Mr. Burrell was saying here, but that we had that conversation when I called you to follow up on all of this. After you requested that I give you a call, which is what we did. But an investigation into an employee wasn't requested because the request was to come before the board at that point in time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some other things happened in the interim relative to some other actions that were happening. So there were documents that you ended up getting. I'm not entirely sure about all the details. But in any case, all right, so we're back to where we started. It sounds like you have legal representation. There is a process by which at some point this could end up in executive session. We're just not there yet. So I think you've gotten hopefully enough direction. I know, Mitch was saying, what exactly is the process, depending on what your request is, I think that's gonna matter. And we can address that outside of the
Right.
meeting,
Well-
certainly, because, to Jeff's point, that's not the purview of the board, but,
Well, the initial request was exactly to be put on the agenda for an executive session.
right, which
Which was to discuss the complaint,
right, and
and
it does
then
not.
figure out what to do from there, but it never even
Exactly.
got to that point.
No, because it cannot work that way, we can't do that for you. We can't go into executive session on the basis of whether or not a complaint might be filed against a particular person, does that make sense?
What, no, I guess you're missing, I'm
Or a
sorry if you're misunderstanding. The purpose of the executive session, which I outlined in this email that's specifically addressed to you, was to provide you, matter of fact, this stack is the documents that, because you were saying, well, we don't have any information. These are actually the facts, that all these things were emailed you, and they were emailed to the police chief, the fire chief, to Michael Nicholson and Laura
So,
Paradise.
just
So all this stuff,
Can I
all
just
this
ask a
evidence has
question?
been sent to them, and they date back to May of 2019.
So just quick question is, so do we have an official complaint we've received?
Yes,
We received a complaint about a situation, but not a request for investigation.
Is that,
no, that's incorrect, because in there it said, I have it right here, it says that I want an investigation.
Okay, so
But yes,
let's jump
yeah.
off of that. For this board,
Yeah,
we're not at the point where we can have an executive session with you,
right,
but it's not out of the realm of possibility for the future.
yeah, no, I understand.
And it sounds like you have what you need to get started, so we're gonna be looking to see some official documentation coming through our channels,
So
right?
Sheila-
It won't be, it's not something that would come before a board in an open meeting and public comment, here you go, and then we suddenly go into executive session, we'll have to follow the process at that point.
Sheila, can we just, because I feel like we're talking in circles a little bit, can we provide what that is? Like, what does he need to do if he wants to pursue this? To provide us, or whatever, in the form of an official complaint, or whatever it might be,
Right.
to get to where he wants to have that discussion? Like, what is exactly the process he needs to follow? Because I think
That's
some of
fair.
his frustration
Yep.
falls into, he feels like he's not being responded to, and
Right, so his,
so then maybe like Mike or you could clarify what
Yeah.
needs to be provided to get to that point.
There isn't a process now for lodging a complaint?
No, there is, and there's a process, and there's mechanisms to go into executive session
No,
for different things, but for
Complaint.
lodging a complaint, right?
against the
right,
town
when we're
employee.
talking about human resources, it's typically going up the chain of seniority.
Right, but I just, how does that work? Can we outline that right now, so he knows what he needs to do?
So-
I mean, I can chime in briefly. So one of the things that you, the town, sent me was the chain of command of the dispatch center. So the dispatch center goes to the dispatch center supervisor, but the records you sent me prove that he's actually a suspect.
We're not
in
talking about
that
the chain
issue.
of command, we're just
So
talking
then you have
about
the
how,
police chief and fire chief above that. They were emailed back in May, and the police chief says, I'm not handling the complaint, go to the selectmen.
Okay.
And it's in that email.
So let's back up.
So,
For-
so that leaves, that's why I told back to you, because the
Right.
police chief hasn't said, hey, I'm gonna take on that investigation, let's do something, then I wouldn't be here bothering you.
So let's,
But they pointed it to here.
so let's back
so-
up,
so,
because you
yes.
mentioned several dispatchers going with chain of command, that would be a formal complaint to the dispatch director.
Which he's a suspect, so he's under investigation as well.
But we're just talking, see, again, you have a lot of stuff going on, and that gets back a little bit to Mitch's question. You have a lot of
Yeah,
moving
well,
parts
I
here.
understand that, yes,
So
but the
relative to
police
just-
chief acknowledged that he could be a suspect and he should not be involved in the investigation.
but at that
Rel-
point, that complaint would then go to the town administrator,
administrator.
which would be the supervisor to
Right.
those departments.
Well, that is correct, right, and that's where we had this conversation, that I believe during the discussion, you said the board should be handling it.
No, that's when you requested that I reach out
Oh,
to get on
okay.
the executive
I
session.
mean, if you're willing to say that you're gonna handle this complaint, I'll come meet with you
Yeah.
someday this week and I'll bring
Okay.
everything down to you and go forward.
He's represented by counsel. You're represented by
Well, I
counsel.
might be, I might not be,
Okay,
because I have two I mean, I gotta be honest right now. It's,
no, but
what's
Mr. Burrell,
going on?
that's okay,
Yes,
that's
okay,
okay.
yes.
That was just a comment.
Yeah, no, I
because
understand,
You
yeah.
said something
So-
about council. I think we probably need to end this for tonight, if only because you have things that need to be done in order to move this forward. The first is lodging a formal complaint. Now, if that is against multiple people, those should be separated complaints. So you lodge the complaint, you name the person, the title, the reasons, and we're gonna call it a day at that point. Depending on who that person is, it will then go up the chain of command. And it might get to the board at some point, particularly,
Right, okay.
right? But it hasn't yet, and that's kind of where we are, that's why we keep, saying, well,
This is ostensibly the extent of the conversation we can have at this point.
it really is.
There's really nothing we can do.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too, and I'm just being honest, right, is the lawyer's not here because I'm not gonna pay him $600 to be here, so that's why I'm speaking on behalf of myself. So the other issue, so we actually really have two separate things. We have civil issues and criminal issues. So my lawyer has reviewed the documents that you gave me, including the audio recordings, and has confirmed that those employees did commit crimes. So what can be done, and I'm still pushing that issue, is that we can file either criminal indictments or applications for criminal complaints and have the employees arrested.
And by the way,
And that's
that-
actually the way I'm leaning right now, because it shouldn't take all of you all this long to make this decision.
So Mr.
So it would
Burrell,
be easier for me to just have your employees arrested than then have you
Okay.
figure it out later.
so let me just,
Oh,
I'm gonna stop
so-
you here, Mr. Burrell,
Yes.
because if that's the route you decide to go,
Yeah,
the board will have absolutely no power over whether or not you do it and what happens when you do. So
Okay.
if that is the route you end up taking, this board will have no action to take, even at that point.
oh, okay.
Other than possibly an executive session update letting us know that it happened.
Right, yeah,
But we would
okay.
have no power in that respect. And in point of fact, we probably have a lot less power than maybe you thought we did. Jeff, did you want to add something?
I was just gonna say, you cited an attorney several times. Experience has shown that if you have counsel, perhaps your counsel could meet with the town administrator, because you get right to the key
Yeah,
points.
he might not be there,
The
that's
nitty-gritty
okay.
of what
Yeah.
the issue is about, because
Yeah.
in fairness,
Okay, you
we
know.
don't wanna hijack several hours of the town
I think
administrator's
in
time.
fairness to, all of us are not caught up to speed or on the same page with the issue. I know that you've had some conversations, and there've been conversations with the chair. Again, there's a lot going on, and it's just, I think we just need to go through if you wanna go through the process, to go through the process, because we just, for some of us, the first time hearing most of this, so
So give this man some direction.
Well, I think,
All right.
I think.
Well, I
alright,
think
so-
for me, I think what I'm gonna do, I'll end this in a minute, but I think what I'll do is, why don't I have another conversation with Mr. Nicholson and just see if we can work something out. So if he says, come to my office, come meet, bring this paperwork, bring this, bring that.
Bring all
and then-
paperwork.
And then that,
Everything that you
right, and then that,
reference, we need to, he's gonna need to
and
see.
that will make this go somewhere. That's all I'm asking for, is just to get it resolved. Because as you can see, right, I sent all these, because even the police chief did the same thing. He said, send me your complaint. I sent him the complaint, and then he admitted to me on the phone, yeah, I was pretty pissed off when I got that, so I didn't email you back. And I'm like,
So
well, why didn't you just say, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk about this any further? Why did you just ignore me? And it just, you're just looking bad by not responding.
just to be crystal clear,
Yeah,
a lack of response is one thing.
Yeah.
Criminal allegations are another. Mr. Nicholson will not be in a position to advise you on how or what you should be doing
no, I
relative
understand
to
that.
that.
Yeah, I understand.
But he can clarify any processes that the town has in place, okay?
Yes.
So when you meet, that's pretty much where you'll head. And again, you have multiple situations, so it's not gonna be the same process for everyone.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
I can also say too, that when any personnel investigations are done, when we meet, I'll have to meet to go over everything you submit and to get your side, but I can't say, well, the town will proceed by doing this, because that's a personnel investigation.
It's just
that's
outline the
privileged.
process.
Yeah, well, I'll outline the process to you,
Mhm.
but I can't give you updates as to specific stuff until that investigation is done.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
all right,
So-
so thank you.
Thanks for
Okay,
coming in.
well,
Have a
no,
good night.
as I said, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just trying to say,
Yep,
here's the situation, here's where we're at, what can you do to help and just, move things forward, so that's all that I'm asking, so.
all right, thank you
Appreciate
for
All
it.
coming
right,
in.
thank you very much, each of your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're gonna move on to old business, town administrator evaluation. We're making progress. We have our 5 criteria for the second portion. I have received some items from some. I appreciate that. We still are on track for the public portion of this, which will be on the next meeting, January 27th. I really just need, like a 30-second period to have everything.
because I know that, you sent me an email today, because you had sent out that email about here was the item we discussed on the 31st,
Yeah.
just here's the spreadsheet.
Yep.
I just wanna make sure that there's nothing wrong with communication, because
I know.
you had said you had sent it on the 31st, and I don't think anybody received it. And which is why I had emailed you last week to say, can we get a copy of that document? Because I know that you, Jeff and Wayne, were not at the meeting in person, we had a very robust discussion at our last
Right.
meeting.
So you got it.
I
You
got it,
messaged me
I
back.
got it today.
You got something today, which was
Today.
an update saying this is sort of last call.
Right,
You got it, and then you got back to me. I didn't hear, I hadn't heard actually from you for a couple times.
I got it.
You got it? Okay, maybe
I thought I handed mine in manually to you.
You gave me
That's-
your first part,
Okay,
so maybe.
oh, I thought it was done.
So the Excel sheet did go out on the 31st.
I didn't see the Excel sheet on the 31st.
And
the
nobody
one
got
that was
back
passed
to
out.
me.
It was today.
Right,
that
I
went
saw
out.
it today.
You saw it today, but didn't see it on the 31st after our meeting.
Correct,
Okay,
right.
Alright,
all right.
And there was an email from like the 16th or something, which I think was another meeting night that
it
was
was
also.
prior to.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I guess maybe like it got snagged in like an outbox or,
But I think that it was, that meeting was tough, we probably should have made sure that we asked Mike or somebody to send a follow-up out because Mike and, or Jeff and
Well-
Wayne weren't there
yeah,
also.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
Well, we're trying to keep Mike on as part of the process. Bottom line, I need small pieces from most people, but we're well on track. So if there are questions about anything, I think at this point, what came out of the meeting with the three of us, at least on the 31st, was 5 very good subjective criteria to follow for that second portion, and I think we're almost there.
And now everybody has it, so we can
Yeah.
move forward and get it done.
and just as a recap for Jeff and Wayne, we had also discussed that we would also get to Sheila our, the part one, the,
Yes, the,
Yeah.
I
just
forget what
the,
it's called.
I know
The
Jeff
uniform
did that.
criteria, and I actually
Right.
have that.
Right,
I actually
and,
have
and
it,
a
yeah.
letter, like kind of
Yes.
cover letter summarizing
Yep.
Yep.
our, possibly our interpretation there.
I appreciate everyone's work thus far. This really is one of the first times we've all done this, and I'm including Wayne and I in that because, yeah,
I appreciate it too.
at this level, it really is, so, thank you. License renewal, Rutland House of Pizza.
They have entered into a payment plan with the treasurer collector's office, so they are in good standing. They were notified by both myself and Richard Stevens, the health agent, that, because originally they also did not have a food permit. That they were not allowed to be open because both their common vic license and their food permit had expired. The establishment remained open. He came back and paid his taxes the next day and was issued his food permit, because the food permit is not contingent on a common vic, but they still are not allowed to be open unless they have a common vic. We sent them a certified letter to let them know that they are still not allowed to be open,
And they're still open.
and they're still open. So we contacted legal counsel. Legal counsel said that the next step would be the board to authorize me to send a cease and desist, unless the permit was approved tonight. And if the board voted the cease and desist route, and they still remained open, then it's file a injunctive relief against them in court of competent jurisdiction. Or the other option is to approve the license tonight, since they are technically in good
Yes.
standings with the town.
Yeah, I'm missing something here. Why are we trying to shut down the pizza place?
Well, we didn't renew the license because
Wasn't paying his taxes, but he's
they didn't pay his taxes.
Yes.
made amends now, so so what's,
I'm just explaining the two options that are available, that's all. They're just explaining the two options that are available to, because I don't think we've had a license just expire for a while in the town. So again, it's more of an explanation of the procedure.
Just to clarify too, when a business owner enters into a payment plan, that doesn't mean that they have paid in full, and it also doesn't mean that they're committed to paying in full over the calendar year. It just means that they're making an effort over what could be an extremely extended amount of time to pay off those debts.
Correct.
Which in of itself is a little bit concerning, because it's just, in essence, you could have a company that's owes $100,000 to the town that's technically in compliance because they're on a payment plan,
Correct.
and you're propping up a failing business with no assets to pay off its debts by letting it continue to operate.
But this is only 6,000 range?
We don't know, because it could, if this is the 10th year in a row, it could be,
So there's a pattern of practice for him.
no, it's not just about Rutland Pizza, it's about in general with, some of these that we're seeing.
Jeff, I'll be honest, my frustration with this is that we had multiple license holders who are all in, various states of business, whatever, some of whom are experiencing challenges. Every single one of those other license holders made an effort, figured it out, got the paperwork in, got it in on time. This business owner not only did not do that, but when given a very 11th hour opportunity to renew the license appropriately, didn't do it, then came in and asked outright if he could remain open, was told no by 2 employees, and did it anyway, and has been operating essentially illegally for the past 13 days. I'm frustrated because it's speaking to every other person in town, every other business holder, business owner that did things right. I'm frustrated about this one, I really am. That said, it's paid up now,
Yeah.
we have everything, so
That's it.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the, is it common vic?
Yes.
Common vic license for Rutland Pizza.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on. Wachusett Solar Pilot Agreement Amendment.
This is just a verbal update to you all today that there'll be something on the agenda in 2 weeks. The Solar Committee is meeting tomorrow to go over the pilot agreements for Wachusett Solar. Wachusett Solar LLC is the panels on Glenwood and Naquag. It's typical that once the panels get turned on, the pilots just get re-reviewed. So that is the process that's taking tomorrow, and then Diane Peterson from RRG Systems will be here at the meeting next, 2 Mondays from now. Because though she's no longer our town assessor through RRG, she's RRG's solar specialist. So she still reviews all the pilots for anything solar. So she'll come do a presentation on how the solar committee meets tomorrow, and we'll have a discussion point for the board at the next meeting.
Great. Next, the Glenwood Field lease signing. We have, oh my gosh, look at this, everyone, but that's 6 copies. As you know, this has gone back and forth through council, and the other party, meaning Rutland Youth Soccer, has executed this document.
Can we do this without Sean? I'm joking.
Could I get a motion?
Were there substantive or any changes made from when we went over prior?
No. The only thing that was different from the last time we were there was clarifying definitions. So
Got it.
for instance, parentheses,
Yeah.
as defined hereafter, or something like that.
All right, motion to sign lease agreement as proposed.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's big. I think we need to call Bob Reed. He struggled.
Well, that was a Marshfield.
He's in
It
Oakdale
was,
right
it
now.
was Marsh, right? Yeah,
Mm.
it's Marshfield. All right, thank you. We'll send these around. Again, make sure you sign 6 copies. The green folder.
3 for us, 3 for them.
I am going to keep moving on, under new business, the Route 68 discussion. I'm actually hoping for some support from the board to take our discussions that got raised and approved by the town at fall town meeting to another level. As we know, there was yet another very extreme accident right around the holidays. It actually happened in Hubbardston, entire family involved. Thank goodness they are amazingly all home.
That was a drunk driver incident.
It was a drunk driver incident. And what it got me thinking was, and there was truth to it. We had a lot of people, particularly at town meeting, who said, why are we doing a study instead of just doing something and putting up a stop sign? In light of yet another extreme accident, and I'm not saying this is gonna stop, drunk drivers, people who are driving under the influence. I'm wondering if it's time for the town of Rutland, maybe in conjunction with the town of Hubbardston, to reach out and see if the study can encompass something different for 68 from a larger perspective. So I'm thinking along the lines of, I believe it's called traffic calming opportunities, whether that's the way they're line striping the road, whether that's adding bike lanes, whether that's actually narrowing what we have right now, which is a very wide road with almost full-size medians on both sides, and looking into the possibility of real lights, real stoplights that are either pressure or camera.
I thought that was, the reason why we commissioned the study was to be able to, if we decided to take an action, go to DOT and
Yeah,
present a case there. I'm not sure what else at this point, with DOT needing that information from us, what we can realistically do.
I think, if I may, I think Sheila is, I don't wanna speak for you, is looking more holistically at 68 as a whole road rather than that one intersection.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I was hoping that when that study comes back, there could be some, I guess, suggestions as to things that could better that opportunity overall, because in the conversations we've had, it's become apparent that, look, the stop sign's up at that intersection, and the accidents that have occurred were due to driver negligence or, somebody rolling through the stop sign. It's just, I think that we need someone to, like we have, looking at it, that will provide those suggestions. I'm not sure when it comes to like traffic calming or bike lane issues, I'd want to have a professional involved versus the board.
yeah, I'm bringing those up as examples.
Right.
But again, to Leah's point, it really is about ideally seeing our study go towards a holistic approach, because it really is not just Wachusett Street intersection, much as that has been our focus over the past several months because of the extreme accidents we've happened to have had there. I'm guessing Hubbardston probably has similar issues. They're seeing incidents as well at the 62-68 crossing, which has a stoplight, in fact, that we've admired in the past because it has the flashers on it. And there's still, I do think this is an issue that might be a 68 end to end. Does Gardner want to get involved?
And what was
It's different up in Gardner. The 68.
And what was
looks
appropriated at town meeting? Are you suggesting changing that?
I'm suggesting ensuring that when we ask for this study, that it's not just about that intersection.
But I mean, that's what was voted at town meeting.
Yeah.
That's the concern,
That's true.
right?
Yeah, my thing too is we were quoted for the study at that intersection with
Yeah.
that number from Ty and Bond.
Yeah.
So that, I think anything additional costs extra, but that might be where we have a collaboration with Hubbardston if we do go forward with
Yes,
this.
maybe.
What realistically though, can we approach the state to have them look at this? Or have we had a discussion with the state about the road in its entirety and what we could
Not
do?
No.
So I mean, that would be the first step, right? Because, they
And
could
grants.
be able to come in and provide either technical assistance or grant money to do that. Because it would have to go to town vote again, right? And get re-voted on.
Yeah.
For more funds.
I think also it would be important to start that collaboration with Hubbardston and or Gardner and or Holden to see if they can provide accident data as well and offer, are they interested in looking at that roadway as an entirety or not?
Yeah.
Maybe they're not.
Realistically, the state
Yeah.
already has all that too. I mean, we're talking about a state roadway and the state has all the information. And I really think that the first step should be talking to the state.
Can we
It's a
clarify,
number.
it's a
It's
number
a
of
number,
roads,
sorry,
it's
it's
not a state road.
Not a state road.
So,
Okay.
And Joe, I know you have some traffic data
Yes,
that
I
you
sent
sent
that
me
out.
earlier, which is great. Did you want to add, do you think
Just-
asking Hubbardston in particular if they would like to collaborate with us on reaching out to the state and saying we'd like to take a holistic approach to 68's issues?
Why are we, just out of curiosity, why are we collaborating with Hubbardston?
I think we see similar issues across the length of 68, most similarly with Hubbardston. The length that happens in Holden doesn't have the same intersections, although they might have the same speed issues. The big intersection that they have is at 122A, and that's a T, not
What's-
the X
I guess what's the similarity?
with Hubbardston.
Yeah.
The intersections and the speed and the design of the road.
But I
Now, in
mean, the
Gardner, by the
accidents-
time you get to 68, the road has narrowed down.
But the accident in Hubbardston was a drunk driver crossing lanes, and the one in Rutland was somebody not stopping at a stop sign at an intersection.
We're always gonna have, every accident's gonna be different, and I'm not saying that any one thing we do, and I think I started with this, is going to prevent and incapacitate a driver
I
from,
just,
I see what
we
you, yeah.
commissioned a study, I just don't know why we're gonna be changing and reaching out with Hubbardston and collaborating. If
Because
we already have a study that we voted on that can kind of accomplish what we're looking to accomplish, right? Is that,
Well, no, I think that the study is accomplishing one thing, and I'm wondering if we should broaden the reach. That's pretty much where I was headed.
but I wonder if
The
broadening the
second
reach is
discussion.
going to I wonder if we can continue with the Wachusett Street 68 study, and then as a longer-term plan, look to more.
I
don't
would,
know.
I would agree with that, just because I know Joe and I already started with Ty and Bond on the Wachusett 68 study. So moving forward, this would be like an additional study or another chapter or something of that nature to be talked about. But what was voted on would be the Wachusett 68.
And I thought we were
Fair enough.
having
Yeah, fair
issues at the intersection.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that there were other issues in that road,
Yeah, I mean.
other than the intersection.
No, I mean, Hubbardston just last week had another accident at the 62, 68 crossing.
Right, but
It's-
we're talking about Rutland though.
Right, but I live on 68 and people are never going only the speed limit. The school buses, it's scary. The kids have to cross 68 for the school buses. I think that it's a much more encompassing project and needs to be more thought out than the Wachusett Street intersection currently. And it's not going to solve all of the problems by any means. So
Having it
there's-
with reports of other problems on 68? Or was it just the intersection that spurred?
Besides speeding, I think they're passing school buses. I think we see people treat 68, you know, you were saying, well, it's a state road and it's not. They treat 68 as something that maybe it once was, but in point of fact, in some cases, and certainly across Rutland, it's residential. The speed limit is 40, nobody's driving 40 on it. We're seeing multiple issues. Now, we don't have any information yet on that drunk driver situation, but was that person driving faster on 68 in an incapacitated state because they're accustomed to doing it, because of the way the road just looks to people? It looks like a high-speed road because of its design right now. It's wide, it's wider than my road.
We're overcrowded.
I don't know the answer, I'm not the
People on the
expert. I'm kind of hoping to just see if we can take this to the next level.
I think we should just ask for some awareness of the town administrator to check into the state to see what options are available for us in lieu of attaching something on the taxpayers as a result.
So you
Just
find
like
us a
comment.
level.
Grant, grants, et cetera, all of the above, just put it in your in basket, that's all.
And I don't know if it would be worth reaching out to Hubbardston at some point to even see if they would be interested in considering any sort, not to say, hey, we're gonna do this, are you interested? But hey, if we did this, is there any interest in doing this? I don't know how the board feels about that. By no means is it binding or a commitment or anything, it's just like a hey.
Yeah.
A couple quick things. Just to give some consideration to. The study does include some public meetings, and I'm assuming that one of them will be here with this group. And it's probably the first study you've funded in many years. So I'm hoping there's things that they'll bring to the table that we haven't thought of. So I would take some time and have some back and forth with the professionals and see what they suggest, and see how that may be applied to other parts of 68 or other parts of town over time.
Okay.
And then we can make some better decisions.
Yep.
I'm not saying that it isn't a worthy cause, I believe it is. We just may not be there yet. The other thing I would also suggest is give some consideration, because we had formed a traffic and parking committee of town officials. You may want to ask them for a recommendation, and just leave it on the agenda for now.
Would the board like to do that?
So moved. Mike.
Do I have a second?
Second,
So, an official request from the board for some recommendations on 68 from the traffic.
Sure.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you.
That,
Good idea.
all right.
Vote.
Thanks for
Do we need to vote on it?
We do. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I think I missed what the vote was for.
The motion was to send an official letter from the board to request some information and recommendations on 68 from the town's traffic committee.
We meet quarterly.
I don't know that we phrased it quite that way, but that was the intent.
Yep.
It's myself, Joe, and the two chiefs. It's a working group of department heads.
All right, final thing under new business, just a reminder that the MMA annual meeting is coming up, not this Friday, but next Friday. And for anyone who is attending, please review your booklet so that we can make sure to divide and conquer when it comes to attending workshops that will help the town, A, and B, get us MIA points, which means discounts on our insurance, always a good thing.
You'll see in your packets, there's the schedule of events, and then following the schedule of events is a detailed listing of all of the workshops that will be taking place at the conference as
Thank you
well.
very much. Is there any other business to come before the board?
There is something I forgot to mention in my update, if it's okay. Just to give an update on something that was on the board's goals and objectives when we met back in June, for an update from the departments as to what happens when we hit the 10,000 population mark. I did reach out to the department heads once over the summer, and then we incorporated it as part of the budget process this year. So I asked, we're at 9,200, I don't expect us to hit 10,000 for a couple of years. The population study that we had says we're not gonna hit 10,000 until between 2024 and 2026. But what I asked the department heads to do is to submit their budgets to me as if the town was hitting $10,000 in this next, 10,000 residents, not dollars, in this next fiscal year. What would that affect your budget as, and what else would that do? Put in your footnotes, this would equate to X number of additional staff members, X number of this, X number of that. Once those were submitted, I then resent out all of the budget memos to the departments and said, now fill this out as if we aren't hitting the 10,000, because we're not. So now when we sit down and review the budget, we'll have next year's budget next to what we're working towards getting for when we hit that 10,000 mark. So we have a visual of, we need to get to this by 2024, or by 2026,
Some
or in
long-term
that time.
planning?
Yes.
Did they enjoy that exercise?
They actually kind of did. So we have all that data from all our departments now. So when we go through the budget process, we'll be able to see when we hit $10,000, it's going to mean this. And we have an actual, like, this is what happens when we hit that 10,000. So,
Thank you. If there's nothing else, could I get a motion to go into executive session, reason number 2, for the purpose, and return only for the purpose of adjournment?
Make a motion to go into executive session for reason number 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, with return to open session only for an adjournment.
Second,
Roll call.
Stillings, aye.
Whiteman, aye.
Ruscitti, aye.
Dibb, aye. Thank you very much, everybody.
Night.